19th century colonial feminism का जो सबसे अहम पहलू था वो ये था that the British woman possessed racial and cultural superiority over Indian women. इस लॉजिक के तहत India was painted as a backward place where the women faced barbaric customs, and thinking of themselves as the citizens of most progressive nation in the world, the British actually proposed that these Indian customs justified the British presence in India as a noble cause to liberate the hapless Indian woman. The British claim of civilizational superiority over us is a big joke. For example, at the time the Mughals were creating the richest and most prosperous empire in the world, 1/3 of the English population had been wiped off the face of this planet due to various diseases, especially the plague called the Black Death. 1 in 3 people lived in abject poverty and crime was uncontrollable. So God knows ये किस superiority की बात करते हैं. At the same time, the women in England were considered second-class citizens. For example, as late as the 19th century, जब ये इंडिया पे कब्जा करना शुरू हो चुके हुए थे, by law, husbands had control over the properties of their wives and even domestic violence had legal cover. In her book Nurture and Neglect, Childhood in the 16th Century England, author Loretta Dolan says that girls as young as 12 were married off. Add to it the fact that the cantonments that they made all over India, ये उसमें brothels बनाते थे, and they forced women into prostitution. And their claim of being progressive towards female cause becomes completely exposed. And the same contention was made by their fellow citizens as well. Their own women who were living in India at the time, they condemned the British society's treatment towards women and actually praised India for theirs. For example, a British campaigner, Josephine Butler, stated about the Tawaif, "There is a certain amount of decency observed in their profession, and they are not made as European women are, mere chattels or instruments. None of the Indian races would tolerate prostitution as organized in European cities." In 1893, Bishop Thoburn stated, "It is a striking fact that the shameless characters in the city are not Indian, but persons imported from Europe." British author Flora Annie Steel echoed the same sentiment. In sexual matters, the standard of national morality is far higher in India than in England. Vice may thrive, but it is silent. So ये कौन सी superiority की बात करते हैं, ये मेरी समझ में तो नहीं आता. And why do we let them walk all over us with this so-called superiority? But here's the most interesting thing I found. While the British administration bent over backwards to paint the Tawaif as an immoral woman who represented the decadence of Indian society, there is evidence hidden in plain view that the British woman in India of the time, she privately harbored great admiration for the Tawaif and she actually looked up to them. I came across this research paper titled "The Nautch Girl and Imperial Feminism at the Fin de Siècle," written by Charan Kamal Kaur. In this research paper, it is discovered that towards the end of the 19th century and the beginning of 20th century, there were around 60 works or so written by female authors centered around the figure of the Tawaif. The sheer volume of these novels suggests that the female British authors of the time, they had an obsessive interest in the Indian dancing girl. From 1880s to 1920s, writers such as Flora Annie Steel, Bithia Mary Crocker, Fanny Emily Penny, Victoria Cross, Alice Perrin, and Ida Alexa Ross collectively produced an astounding 60 works or so that engaged with the Nautch girl figure in their novels. And in these fiction novels, the British authors express deep admiration for the figure of the wife and their lifestyle. And it is in this space that the female British authors express their discontentment with the lives they were living. Let me explain. The primary reason to import British women in India in early 1900s was to deter the British officials from indulging in Indian culture and falling prey to the charms of the Tawaif. The British women were supposed to maintain these racial and cultural boundaries between British officers and local women through their ties to imperial homemaking, which is being good wives, preparing meals for them and bringing up their children. Consider the words of Thomas Metcalfe. The English woman, within the private sphere she presided over, bore the unenviable responsibility, what one may call the white woman's burden, of both representing the virtues of domesticity and extending the authority of the Raj. So the woman who was supposed to liberate the Indian woman from the clutches of oppression was herself confined to the role of being a homemaker. That's why the underlying admiration that these female novelists express in their novels becomes all the more noteworthy. It shows that far from what is commonly presented, many British women found themselves to be stifled by their Western values, and Tawaif served as models of female empowerment to the British women. For example, Flora Annie Steele's novel The Potter's Thumb lists an encounter between a white colonial woman, Rose Tweedy, who is an emerging new woman of the 1890s, and the strong-willed courtesan named Chandni, an Indian female rebel who strongly opposes the colonial rule. During the heated exchange between the two, the rebellious Indian confidently asserts that she was the mistress, and this girl, Rose Tweedy, despite her courage, was in her power. What is more, she should learn it. Similar is the case with Flora Annie Steele's Voices in the Night, written in 1900, and Alice Perrin's The Woman in the Bazaar, written in 1914. In the first novel, the Goris experience the pull of the Nautch girl in the bazaar, and although they are shown to resist her seductive call, their susceptibility reveals a deep-seated discontentment with their domestic lives. In the second novel, though, the English heroine, Rafaela Fort, experiences what Steele's female characters can only imagine. She escapes the unhappy domestic life and the demands of her overbearing husband and runs off to the heart of the Indian city, where she starts a new life as a Tawaif. Then there is Fanny Emily Penny's The Romance of a Nautch Girl. This novel centers around the ambitions of the new woman, Beryl Holdsworth, alongside two Nautch girls, Deva and Minachi. Both types of women share a common goal, the desire for female empowerment. However, in the end, it is the Nautch girls in the narrative who prove to be more persistent and successful in securing this power. As per the ending of this novel, the new woman realizes that she is better off remaining behind the sheltered walls of the Anglo-Indian home, as she lacks the courage needed to achieve her goal. So it is in this space that the British writers underline multiple moments where the British women feel comparatively inferior to the Indian dancing girl. And seeking freedom from the white woman's burden, English authors, through the heroines in their novels, are shown to deeply admire the Tawaif with a hidden desire to emulate them. Living vicariously through the Indian dancing girl, the female authors grapple with the lingering uneasy recognition that their cultural and their racial identity is not an assured sign of their advancement. And perhaps their emancipation lies not in saving, rather following the Indian dancing girl.